there is no way I could bring words to disappoint my father. Only way you make money in order to determine it is to have a load of it. The biggest lift that you make is in the decision. And once you've made the decision, lockstep and go.
Today, Dr. Charles Diggiss is more than just a physician. He is an innovator, a builder, and a man with a vision far beyond the present. A leader who doesn't just respond to change, but creates it. His journey is not just one of medicine, but of courage, reinvention, and purpose. Today, we walk through the moments that shape that vision and the mindset that continues to drive it forward. Welcome to Glowing Conversations. So, Dr. Diggiss, what are the early experiences that have shaped your sense of purpose before medicine even entered the picture?
My foundation years would be the platform that explains how I became, what my values were, my whole philosophy about life. And those foundation years would have come through the Baintown experience, growing up on Cambridge Street, growing up in a big family, 2 boys, 6 girls, maybe about 8 to 9 women in the house altogether with 3 men, 2 boys and 1 man. My father, he was a strong figure. And so his values and my grandmother's values would have been the foundation that set me to become who I became. These were Christian principles. These were principles of hard work, principles of staying out of trouble. You know, we were obviously young and curious and inquisitive, and we did all the things that young people did at that time, but they surrounded us with activity, and there was always something to do, from school to music lessons to homework on the weekend, just multiple chores. The devil finds work for idle hands was the theme, and so we were truly not idle. And so my foundation would have come out of that structure, multiple activities, the oversight of both parents, the extended grandparent, everybody through the corner who thought that they could discipline you. That setting, he put that context to how when I got into QC, which was an all-white school then, that is what I brought to that setting.
Because I've heard the story of you being one of the only black kids at QC at the time. Tell us more about that experience, because I'd imagine this would be around what year?
So you go to 1964, 1965. I am Christmas of 1964. I get taken to do an entrance examination at QC. I remember the drive, the longest drive of my life, coming from Baintown to Village Road, and just me and my dad, and knowing that something big was about to happen, but having been taught to just step up and be courageous. If my dad was going then, I was going, no question. Doing this exam, and the headmaster of the primary school, Mr. Lane, he was there on a Saturday, spent about 2.5 hours. And then being told a week later that this would now be my school. And, all the flurry of getting uniforms, etc. I remember, and the anticipation and a lot of encouragement from my home. And then taking that long ride again in January, going to the school, getting there, and then gradually realizing that this was just a pure white space. Um, it may have been said to me, I may have ignored it, but this was reality right there. And then standing in front of a classroom, grade 5, at the time, Miss Lonsdale, the teacher, and I remember her saying to me, That's your seat, introducing me to the class. Still looking around, complete sea of white. And I remember, going, sitting down, and the girl next to me, these were double desks. The girl next to me, she just bolted. And I remember just freezing in that moment. So many things swirling in my head, the whole mixture of, boy, I don't know, this is a great decision, rejection. It was just all turbulent. And Miss Lonsdale, she made her best effort to rescue the moment, move some folks around. I think it ended up with a guy sitting next to me when she finally moved the pieces around. But I distinctly recall the rest of the day just taking in this new reality that this is what the world is going to be.
Right. So, Dr. Diggiss, just taking a step back, what school did you go to prior to QC, and what led that decision for your parents to kind of enroll you in Queens College?
So my school was then Brown and Tan, Nassau Street Junior School,
Okay.
which would have been maybe 25 to 50 yards from my house.
Oh, wow.
So it was literally across the street
Right.
through somebody's yard, and I was in school.
Okay.
So usually when the bell rang, we left the house.
Okay.
Right. And Aubrey Sales today, it was a comfortable school, all black, clearly, very caring teachers, I remember. In fact, it was at that school that they discovered I couldn't see. And because my grades deteriorated, and the teacher brought it to my parents' attention, they got my eyes tested. I got into wearing glasses, came back to school with glasses. They teased me, called me Doc. At the time, that was a tease, but that turned out to be pretty prophetic. So you didn't tell anyone you couldn't see? No. Why not? That's embarrassed. It was embarrassment. It even reminds me when, 2 years ago, a year ago, my son, he's, 18-ish, grown man, he says, but he's still 18. And he couldn't see, kind of kept that to himself. I realized that it's a bit of an embarrassment unless you like the glasses, and the glasses look. Now it's all hell to get them to take them off. But, then there was nothing about spectacles that was attractive. So I really, with trepidation, I put them on, and then it got worse when they teased me as Doc, meaning a nerd.
Okay.
But, I went with it, and hey,
Right.
here we are. But so it was that. And then it was my father being introduced to QC by the principal of QC through the Methodist connection.
Okay.
And Reverend Stewart, he explained to my dad, the best thing you can do with these children, now that you have so many of them, is to put them all in QC. Right. And, my dad, he always took good advice, and he took it. It was a big sacrifice for him to figure out how, between scholarships and his income, to do it. But he committed to doing it, and all of us eventually ended up in QC. But he was taking the advice of a principal who thought his number one investment would be education at the best level available for his children.
Right. So you were the first child of your parents to attend QC?
My sister and I. Okay. So my eldest sister, there's 2 girls, myself, 2 girls, my brother, and then 2 girls.
So you would have graduated from QC, and then it would be off to college next. You would have experienced or had that experience at QC, realizing for the first time back then that this is a different type of space, and then you went off to university. Tell us about that kind of transition, and what sort of principles and values that you had from your family, because it seems like everyone accomplishes in your family. There's no one who sits down and not do anything by virtue of the dedication your father had to education. Tell us about that transition from being in Nassau and then even going to university. I always hear people when in your time going to university, like, how did you do it? Because it's hard for us.
Right.
We learned that eventually we would have to leave the nest. And my father's example would have set us up for that because he left for about 2 years to go to the UK. He went to Liverpool to do civil engineering. And so the burden was to my mother and all of us. So we knew that the next level education was to go off. And he put that in us when he returned. He had set that example. And clearly he didn't want to promote a course that he himself would not have followed. So that was important. So he set the example. And then all of us knew, we got very excited about the world and travel. And my parents, both of them, were really excited about travel and introducing us to a world beyond the Bahamas. And that explains why instead of having, overwhelming anxiety and trepidation about going off, we had excitement and almost um, the vigorous looking forward to getting in a different place, experience different people, and just getting the credentials. So I had initially opted to try to get into Canada. That became difficult. UWI was welcoming, especially as a medical school. So going to UWI, getting into the Faculty of Natural Sciences initially, pursuing all of those natural sciences, zoology. I fell in love with zoology. But after 2 years there, my grades enabled me to transfer into the medical school. And that was everything that I imagined it was to be. And I did not have a moment when I thought that the decision was a wrong one. There were some difficult times. There were some challenging times. Times when, I had difficulties with exams. But at no point did I think that I would actually rewind or go back. A part of that was there is no way I could bring words to disappoint my father. Those words didn't exist. It's not that he said that, but he, like me, implies that. So I knew that my charge was if I do anything, I will die first before I disappoint this man. So,
Right.
welcome to my world.
Right.
I love. Give me a second. I love that you are so much your father because you always imply things and people
Right.
just get it.
Right. Or
And
figure out, or have to figure it out. You gotta figure it out. Right.
But
So, Dr. Diggiss, tell us about the relationship with your father. I want to just go into that because it seems like he had a great impact on your life and the decisions that you made and the purpose that you kind of developed in your life. So just tell us about who he was and what impact he had on you.
My father was a doer,
Okay.
said little, and really represented himself through example. At the age of 14, he left school to build a home for his mother. So this was the home that we grew up in. And his father was absent. And the values that were put in him by his mother were so strong and strong for his manliness. She really empowered him to become a man and to represent always what he needed to represent so that he had a strong family. So strong family values. And his view in life was to do things. So he would recognize a problem and then he would correct it. So we grew up in an environment of outside toilet. And we became the first house in the block to have an inside bathroom. The amazing thing about that bathroom is that it was always available with 13 people in the house. It was one bathroom. You put that now to our, luxurious existence, and you wonder, how is it that, you have a house with almost 5, 6 bathrooms, and it's difficult to get into one of them, But it's the structure, the values, the structure, the discipline the example and the consistency. He was amazingly consistent. He didn't detract. In fact, none of us could remember an argument between him and my mother. So if he had, we could remember our mother arguing. There was no memory of my dad participating in these arguments. So he would retreat and he would probably have a conversation about, what, and in his own quiet way, he would resolve. And then he would bring that to us. He taught us some interesting lessons. Lessons number one, these are the lessons that stand out. Lesson number one, he would, in the middle of us, you can imagine how rowdy the house would become, and noisy and contentious as everybody is, yeah, and 6, 7 women, you could imagine, right? That gets truly noisy. And he would do things like he would show us the budget. This stands out, and he taught us to budget, and so that you don't use hope when you spend, you use reality when you spend. And in demonstrating this reality, he would show that right after a big turbulent row or argument, he would just, let's have a budget conversation, and at the end of it, he would show that after all his money is spent on all of these obligations, he would end up with this magic number, $13 and some cents, which was for him. That was the line item for him. And then he would ask, then who would have a right to make noise in this house?
Lay
Now,
down the law right away.
That's it.
That's
So-
it.
Mike, drop the
Well,
mic.
so that would create a lot of silence, The other lesson is amusing in a way when, as we became teenagers and the girls wanted the same rights as the boys as far as coming home, which, one can understand that. But my dad was very concerned about his girls. So he would tell them, well, you have to be home by 11, but the boys can be home by 12. So he cut us some slack. Of course, it was a big ruckus from the girls. And so he said, well, let me introduce you to the United Nations. This is how the United Nations works. Everybody has an opinion, and they all have an opinion. He said at the end of it, the person who controls the United Nations, they vote. It's called a veto. And he voted his veto, and he said, here's how it's going to be. The girls be home at 11, and the boys come home at 12, and the meeting was over. So it was an interesting appreciation that you have rights. My sisters were very strong on rights. You do have rights, but your rights are usually limited by powers beyond rights. And just be mindful that there are other powers that do exist. Not to diminish your significance, but just to be mindful that if you are completely in charge of something, then be completely in charge of it. And that brings with it not only responsibilities, but an empowerment, and use that empowerment. He didn't try to be friendly with us. He made that very clear. He made it just, I love you, but I do not, and sometimes I do not, absolutely not like you. So with that clarity, we knew that he did what he had to do out of the love for his family. We felt that always, never a break. And he did that through his actions, but he made it very clear the times when he was not liking us.
I think that describes a lot of your personality and your sense of responsibility and empowerment. And I think that really started to shape the leader that you would have ultimately became. So that's really impactful.
Yeah, it's I could see the pragmatism from him being in you in the way that you lead. I know you know that your father was a civil servant. I think he was the director of works.
Eventually, he became an assistant director of works. Yeah.
You also worked at PMH. What was that like? Those years? What were those years like?
PMH years began as a resident in surgery, and those were exciting years for me, being a surgical resident. A lot of fun, learning surgery, working with different consultants. I had so much fun that I started a business, a disco, with another surgeon and a woodwork teacher from QC. So we had GCS productions, and we would play out at different events. This was our love of music expressed in business. At the time, you're talking about 45s and albums, so we had to move these big trays of equipment and the like around. Um, we had mixers, old style mixers then, no computers, just sliding, you know, knobs back and forth to deliver the music. Our trademark was to just be hidden away because we played in different locations and people would usually play until people ask,
Who's playing
who's
this?
playing this music, you know? And so we used to look forward to that. That was fun. So those years were growing years. I got to fall in love with surgery. I knew that I would now need to go off and finish surgery. And what captured me was the opportunity in Glasgow. And then that brought to end that first phase of PMH, the resident years, completely enjoyed a lot of work and a tremendous amount of experience. I did independent surgeries um, as much as the boss at the time realized that I could do. I would get it. So let's say the consultant would do maybe their one or two private cases, and they'd give me the rest of the list to finish 6 or 7 cases. So it was fun. I must admit I completely enjoyed it. Got along with the operating room staff. Grew, exercised judgment, made some good decisions. Didn't get risky and reckless. So those were great times.
Where did you see, I guess, medicine in the country at that time? Where did you see the future of it? And were you at that point looking into the future or to see where your place would then be? Because there is the honeymoon phase of like enjoying the job in the beginning, and then it's like as you evolve, your perspective evolved as well.
My first year after internship was spent in the accident emergency department, and that was a baptism of fire. And there is there is no place like that. But I fell in love with that. The challenge of trauma, the challenge of the unexpected, and I would literally take on. At the time, we didn't have the outpatient clinics and the added sophistication that A&E has and the added services. That meant that the patients who needed to be seen in the emergency room, the high acuity trauma, they filled the room almost immediately. And so when you came to work, you knew in all of these cubicles that that was the work. But there was one room dedicated to those who were not that, let's say they were urgent care. And that urgent care, that room pile of notes would normally sit at 70. Now, you had some physicians who decided I met 70 and I'm going to leave 70. So they would come and they would just be leisurely and, just taking their time because they figured I can't solve this problem. Why would anybody assign me to see 70 patients? That's all. And then notes kept piling on to the bottom. Well, my view was different. You give me 70, then I took a deep breath in and I said, you know what? This 70 gonna get seen. And then that was my run. And apologies for the patients who probably got 30 seconds, but
Right.
they probably shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Oh, wow.
But I just thought that the challenges were there to be conquered, to just, whatever comes at you, and maybe that's the attraction of the emergency room. It's unknown, but it brings out in you an ability to almost immediately adapt to a problem. Don't panic, my favorite words. Don't panic, pivot. Um, and just very quickly get in the flow of whatever is going on. There's no need to make noise. There's no need to cry out. There's only the need for you to just quietly control a situation. As much as it is chaotic, you can still control it. So, as much as patients came in coded, my view was I am going to control this first, which means I got to bring everybody temperature and noise down, right down. Now everybody can think. Now here's what we're going to do. One, two, and we just move like that. And as a result, I think with that approach, patients as well as my colleague physicians started to appreciate that pretty much would define me. Just bringing the noise down.
You need to bottle that.
So, in hindsight, that sounds wonderful. That sounds very easy, calm. But were there any experiences in that A&E department that you couldn't control that really, it's like, wow, this is shocking?
Everything was on the edge. So, this is it's a comment my brother makes sometimes. He does all the work for all the properties within the group. And he makes a comment sometimes that rings loudly with me. He calls me Diggy. He says, the problem is you make things look easy. And what that does, unfortunately, is to cause people to believe that it's easy. It's not easy. There's a lot of turmoil and turbulence, but it's within me. I don't put that on to other people. So most situations of patient shot, patient stabbed, patient coded, etc., it created the same rush. Everything that everybody else went through, I was going through. I just did not express it like that. I contained it and then focused more on what's the most important thing I need to do in this situation. One, I need to rapidly determine what's going on, and two, I need to start to make the situation better. And so the answer to your question is more, I would have gone through all of the roller coaster emotions that anybody in that situation would go through. The difference is my emotions would be 3 seconds as opposed to the whole day.
Right. But I mean, that emotional intelligence must have been a learned behavior. Where did that come from?
I, again, would attribute that to the example around me, having never seen a man lose control or explode, though he had 8 reasons to explode every day. Not seeing that and getting the clear-eyed view that whatever came at you in life, it's important for you to just deal with it. Then I think I just took a page from that, and whether that's genetics or inheritable traits or whatever, I just leveraged that, and then here we go. Here I am.
I remember you telling us the story about your transition or you going to Glasgow, and the professor asked if you came all the way here just for this one test. So when you talk about simply just doing the thing, it needs to be done. I'm wondering how did that Glasgow experience, having just gone over, take the test and be like, well, if I don't pass, I gotta go back. Like, how was that? How was that experience?
Again, I go back to my father because the one thing that he found repulsive was normal and ordinary.
Oh, I love it.
And he would consistently tell us, anybody, he would use a different term, anybody could be normal.
Right.
And it was clear to us that our role in life was to look at how do you become different, extraordinary, etc. And he would comment sometimes that, it's not difficult to be good in the Bahamas. You just got to be different. Because most of the people lining up and they're going to do the minimum or become mediocre. But if you just do a little more, you become extraordinary and suddenly you're in front of the pack and leading. But there's nothing that you would have done that was so overwhelming. And so he let it become very clear to us that when you talk about success, focus on what I teach now, best and different. Best, different. Very clear and simple path to becoming successful. And once I saw the promo for surgery in Glasgow, I just completely dismissed that was on the other side of the world. I just knew that I was going
Just
to
going
that
there.
interview.
Wow.
So when I got there, then, and this is Dr. Stewart, Mr. Stewart McPherson. He's a renal transplant surgeon. I remember he and I chatted by phone and we confirmed the appointment, and he was basically finishing the case. So I had my appointment in the surgeon's lounge after he came out of the theater. And so we chatted, and he was asking a few things about me, and I had already set in all of the material to help him in his decision. But I remembered him saying at the end of it, "Well, Charles, so you're gonna return to your job, and we'll get back to you. Where do you work?" And the way he said it, he thought I was working somewhere in the UK. And I said, "Oh, I'm working in the Bahamas." And he went, "Oh, okay. You came to Glasgow for the interview, and then you're going back home?" I said, "Yeah, that's about it. That's right." And I remember him taking a moment and pause, and he said, "Okay, don't move. Let me go and get some things sorted out, because clearly he made it clear to me, you're in the program. Let me just, and in the program only because, and the program was more a beginning, an opportunity. It led you into a path of hurdles that you had to get through. But in his head, if you are going to come half a world away for an interview, you are the student that we want." And so that point, more than anything else, just the courage. And I don't want to diminish the trepidation that you feel when you do that, but the courage to just be different, to just be better, to be best. It doesn't normally take the biggest lift that you make is in the decision. And once you've made the decision, lockstep and go. Don't listen to anybody. Put your blinders on and go, because listening is going to be part of your problem. The voices in your ear that's going to tell you, what if this, what if the plane crash, what if the train don't run, what if they don't accept you, what if you could go there, you could go there. I was not brought up to go there, because I knew that I was going to give this man a decision that he had no choice on, because I knew full well that there was no other student who was going to make the sacrifice.
So you were best and different by
Right.
going across the board.
Right. Courage meets uncertainty. So every visionary has a North Star. What was your guiding North Star in that moment? Like, what were you hoping to achieve by going to Glasgow?
Glasgow was the genesis of surgery. All of surgical history sits in the city of Glasgow. And I can sum up the answer to that with being in a meeting when I'd gotten through the first part of surgery and now getting into working in Glasgow. And I was sent to a consultant, and he said, "Well, Charles, welcome to my team, blah, blah. I understand that we're going to make you a surgeon." And of course, my crass young self says to him, "I'm a surgeon already.
Right.
I came here to be certified." Now, I didn't really intend it to sound as crass as that. I just wanted him to know that I am not the surgeon novice. I am a surgeon, but I know that I'm here to get better at being a surgeon. So my North Star was, I'm going to become a surgeon. I'm going to become the best surgeon that I can. I'm going to get busy doing what I can. And I just knew that, let me get this part done. I also knew that it was not only surgery in my North Star, even back then. And that was fulfilled when the final results of surgery, at the end of my journey in Glasgow, when they posted the results, I remember 40 candidates being examined that day, and they put up these 5 names. And all that anxiety, when they put the names up, you have 20 minutes to go and look at the names before they close the college. A very cold place. So everybody's pressing to see the names. And I looked up and I didn't see my name, because they had my name as William. I just looked down the list and I said, "Oh, well, 5. I didn't see any Charles." And I just started to go. And one of my friends said, "But your name is up there." So I went back and I saw William Charles Diggiss. And I said, okay. Now, I didn't have elation and drama. I had more relief that I had now cleared that hurdle. And I knew as I was driving back home, in my whirlwind of thoughts, I knew that there was more. But surgery, at least the validation that now you're a specialist general surgeon, that part is done. But I knew there was more.
Right, right. Did you feel, or at least when did the shift in surgery to leadership happen? When did you begin to pivot from surgery to leadership?
I had a couple of reality checks. One reality check was while I was in A&E, director of A&E at PMH, running things, I realized that a lot of the initiatives that involved getting the staff better required money. Mystery.
Shocker.
And I
Shocker.
realized, number two, so it required money. Number two, the money was not forthcoming. So I had to become creative in how I got money to get this team off to places like New Jersey and Baltimore to experience here's what a medical, um, an emergency and trauma center, here's what they do. So my view was if I take my core team to the Mecca and they could see, and we did a program called Advanced Trauma Life Support as well. Advanced cardiac life support training for the nurses and advanced trauma life support. So back then, this is what I introduced. Let's get this going. And that became the North Star for them. But for me, it was where is the best places that I can take this team? And it costs money and it costs, the commitment of time. But what's interesting is when that happened, each one of the nurses, especially, have become leaders in their own way. I think out of a group of maybe six, two of them maybe came back, eventually settled back in the Bahamas and are now leading. Four of them are anywhere otherwise in the world leading. Their eyes were open to what was possible. And that became my thrust. Let's see what's possible. And then that formed the North Star in terms of what is needed for me to get to it. So money also became clear to me in terms of making moves in my life. I would have liked to circumvent the need for money, but everything costs.
Right.
And I realized I had to make money not the determinant. And the only way you make money not a determinant is to have a load of it. So I had to embark then on a strategic, intentional strategy in entrepreneurship and in business. Very intentional, very incremental, very steady, a long view, a compound view. And I had persons along the way who would have advised me. But I knew that the direction I was going in, this was with a 15, 20, 30-year plan. And I took it and I just approached it like I would approach anything else. I knew that I needed a lot of it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's such a powerful theme, not just for young people or professionals or anyone. I think exposure is so critical to just having the vision, knowing what's possible, knowing where you are and where you could be. I think that's a really important theme for anyone.
you're right, just having people see, whether it's your example or whether it's a location, whatever you do, just let them see what it is that is possible for them to become. And then you've done your work. They'll do the rest.
So, introduce us to the idea of Doctor's Hospital and where in your journey did you really become committed to Doctor's Hospital? Like, how did that start?
So you go into 1982, 83, and I am having, all the challenges and the fun as a surgical resident at PMH. And then there's this opportunity that comes along to moonlight at this hospital a block away. I'd never been to doctors. And, it was a mystery. And I had my initial trepidation because of the view of the Racine Hospital. I felt like it was off limits even, but they wanted me to come and look after patients at night and assist surgeons in surgery. And it didn't take me long, to be honest. Probably 1 or 2 seconds. Yeah, I'll do it. But the introduction was powerful because the environment was caring. Mrs. Racine, the original Dr. Racine's wife, was probably the opposite of him. So he was irascible and difficult. And he had quite a repertoire of capabilities in surgery, from tonsils, delivering babies, fixing bones, and general surgery. He was the all that, today would be despised. But at the time, he represented another level of quality that in my work at PMH I wasn't seeing. So here was my introduction to quality and safety and standards. That impressed me. And then the wonderful introduction to caring. They would feed you like crazy at the Rossin Hospital. And this was the principle of Rosetta Rossin, to take care of staff. And probably that's my introduction to taking care of her associate. She believed that if she took care of the staff, they would take care of these patients. And so she had to make sure that they were just over the top in terms of wanting to work and bragging about working at the Rossin Hospital. That introduction then, let's move out of 1982, 83 and go into now I'm finishing 2 years at PMH looking at an opportunity and realizing that for me to become what I wanted to become, I had to leave PMH. And I realized very early on, and I share this often with uh, people who talk about having to make a difficult decision. I tell them the problem is not where you are. If you stay immersed in where you are, you're going to miss the opportunity. PMH will always be there. PMH is a wonderful place full of wonderful people. It just is overwhelmed. So I put that in context and I started to look at what it was that I was going to do. And now I was clear eyed on I am going to my opportunity. I am not leaving PMH because fill in the list, beat up PMH. No, no, no. PMH was fine. It taught me, it grew me, it matured me. It certainly gave me hundreds of patients to work on, become who I became. But moving to doctors then gave me just a clean slate because it was trying to get going with 24/7 emergency services, trying to get going with committed surgery. There was no committed general surgeon. And so I looked at the two of those and I said, yep, I'm going to take this emergency room. And I remember having a conversation with Barry Rossin back then about what's the problem? His problem was, well, I can't find emergency doctors. And I said, well, I'll solve your problem. And I remember just committing to him that, listen, I'm going to solve the problem of emergency room physicians. And from 1990, when I made that commitment, 24/7, every day to now, we've solved the problem of emergency physicians. Now, along the way, it's been an interesting journey, but every shift, there's an emergency physician in the emergency room at Doctor's Hospital because of the commitment and the relationship. And surgery became just an explosive space for me at Doctor's Hospital.
So you described the then Rossin Hospital as off limits, but did you feel that the patients or the other physicians looked at you any different as a young Black physician coming over from PMH into the then Rossin Hospital?
All I felt was welcome. They were looking to see if they could encourage me that, once you've trained up, this is the place that you want to develop.
Very
Even
different
though-
than the QC.
Oh,
The QC experience.
quite different. Yeah.
Okay.
So talk to us about, at this point, you're in Doctor's Hospital, you're here 24/7, and what are some of the other things that you've noticed that kind of brought you closer to, I guess, I want to say like ownership, but there's so much in between that. Like, how did we get to working, moonlighting, as you say, and then to now, like where we are right now?
So we skip from the moonlighting, we complete surgery, come back, looking at this opportunity, emergency room and surgery, now committed. This is into the early 90s. In surgery, I realized that, again, how do I do best and different? And I had an amazing opportunity for best and different, which is the technique of laparoscopy. Laparoscopy was not he had applied in general surgery. And typical me, I decided, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I invested in the development of my laparoscopic skills. It was not easy initially, so I could understand the rejection of some of the established surgeons. They're not going to bother with this telescope and pinhole and all that. But I was truly attracted to, drawn to it, got into it, and finally introduced it in general surgery in Doctors Hospital between 94 and 95. But there was another piece, which was now that I have the emergency room, now that I have this innovative introduction in surgery, what about the hospital itself? And it was that piece that I realized was a huge opportunity, but it was Doctors Hospital was being run as a cottage, small facility. And like all small health facilities, any new person coming in was seen as a problem, especially when you're talking about recommendations, etc. And I remember sending a letter to the board at that time with my 36 points on what the hospital needed to do to improve. And it was such an amazing, Ratton Hospital is a small space. And I remember after sending that letter, they probably didn't talk to me for about a year or two, just in
You were still
reaction
working
to,
here?
and we all working in, we all working in one space. And, but they, and to Barry Rasson's credit, because he had aligned himself with the American College of Healthcare Executives, and he was able to see how the future was developing, and the future was developing with physician leadership. There was no question. And so he understood that where I was coming from was correct. And he made the interesting pivot to embrace what he thought would have been there was an established physician leadership. But my view was they didn't get it. This was an old guard. They were set in what they were doing in Doctors Hospital. And this is not represented, in my view, physician leadership. This was just physicians who happened to, by attrition, rise to the level of decision making in doctors. So they realized I'd come to break all that up, which was true. And having done that, I think Barry wisely saw that the energy I brought, but more specifically, the commitment to growth that I brought and structure was going to take Doctors Hospital to where we eventually got towards the end of the 90s. We got into the um, public offering, initial public offering, so that Doctors Hospital now could become a health system. That view was originally his, the opportunity for Doctors Hospital to move from a cottage hospital and to extend into a health system. And he and I would have lots of conversations about the possibilities of Doctors Hospital into that space. He introduced us to a book by Clayton Sherman, Creating a New American Hospital, and we simply change American into Bahamian, and we use all of the tenets and principles and teachings of Clayton Sherman in that book, and introduced in the late 90s what would be described as the first cut at the cultural transformation of Doctors Hospital, looking at how we work, how we behave,
Mm-hmm.
the values in the workspace, just breaking the hierarchical relationships to insert respect and accountability and others that now has become so regular or common or taken for granted.
Our core values and how
Yeah,
we work around those and infuse those into the work that we do
yeah,
every single day.
that started back in the late 90s. Yeah.
I think that's such a great point. I just want to add that that boldness to make recommendations to anyone who may be in a higher position than you. I think that's something that young people really have to take ownership of and be comfortable with, because that's something that, you're in that position to do, to really give your ideas, to give your opinion, even though it may be different.
Take a year.
Or it may take a year, I think that's so important to do and really just hone into and really make the most of in that situation.
It was good because it enabled me to write, which is a whole story. Um, because I fundamentally am a writer. If I'm going to express something to you, I'm probably going to put writing it somewhere in there. And there was both a commitment and a power to writing. The commitment in writing means that you have to get it as clear as you can because it is a permanent record of your view. Well, that didn't frighten me because I wanted a permanent record of my view. But I also wanted to be beyond committed. I wanted to set a bar for myself. And the only way I could do that is to concretize it, to bring it right front and center to people, to let them know this is where I believe we can go. Here's the opportunity. Let's pursue these possibilities. And I'm writing it out. And I'm also giving myself the challenge. And so my message would be to, anybody a mentor, any student, young people, you type it out, even if you're not going to handwrite it out, but type it out. But what that does is that drives commitment. It sets the bar, but it's going to drive, this is what you're committed to. And don't be afraid to be committed to something. Just go at it.
Right. Okay.
I want to touch on your grow, learn, outreach, and wow. Please, I didn't mean to preempt, but I really want you to get into what Glow is and the impact that it's had on the organization or the intended impact it has even on the community.
The culture in an organization, the way people behave, the way people treat one another, the way people make others feel determines the outcomes, success of an organization. If you do not fundamentally believe that, then the story is over. First, you have to believe that when people come into a workspace, they need to bring their vulnerabilities, bring their ignorance, bring all of their peculiarities, but most especially, bring those 6 E's that we've developed because they're going to bring their energy and they're going to be looking to see how far can I go. At the end of all this, I'm going to become an extraordinary person. Is that going to help Doctors Hospital? Absolutely. Is that going to help me? Absolutely. On the journey from bringing energy and becoming extraordinary, that to me is what Glow is all about.
I want us to double back and talk about the Journey to Best program because this program, like you would have said, focuses on personal development, professional development, and workplace optimization. Now, I know, at least, I can't put my head on the chopping block, but I might put my hand, that there is not a program such as this in many organizations. Talk to us about what brought this out of your mind when you talk about Glow.
We go back to my look at the organization after I completed my master's degree in medical management 2010. We have also completed a successful first Joint Commission International accreditation, and so many principles of quality, safety, standards, and culture of an organization came out of that. And then over the years leading into 2014, I was looking at what committed decision I needed to make. Do I channel my energies in my own group of companies, or do I channel my energies into Doctors Hospital? Well, I decided channel energies in a Doctors Hospital. What does that involve? Well, that involved a number of things. One, I had to become significantly invested in Doctors Hospital, so I had to check that box, which is the purchase of shares from Barry Rassin, so became the single largest shareholder. The next box was to move into how can I influence the workspace culture. And as I read and read prolifically, what started to take shape was the grow, the learn, and the outreach, those three pieces of what then became Glow. And the W, struggling for the word for the W, when I finally got it, when I asked the question, at the end of it, what is it that you want persons to say about this initiative, about this program? And wow, it was right there. Grow, learn, outreach, and wow, those components. And I created the Glow tenets to each one of them. what specific aspects of GLOW, of grow, learn, outreach, and wow would constitute then the program. When I then took a look at it, I associated it with its bibliography, and then I said, what's the signature? And the signature became clear to me: journey the best along a road called better. We're always on this road of life. We call that road better. And we're taking our journey to best, our best selves, our greatest selves. And that then encapsulated the signature: GLOW, journey to best. Pieces of it: personal growth, professional development, and workspace optimization. What would students get out of it? They would dive into themselves. They start off with a shattering question: why are you here on earth? And they almost feel like this gotta be the wrong place that I'm in. Why would a workspace initiative ask you that one question right out of the gate? Why are you on earth? Why are you here at Doctor's Hospital? What's your why? And we take them then on a journey from why through their commitment to their professional development, their hard skills. We get into their soft skills. And when you look at our journey cartoon, you'll see that it's taking you into some very intentional spaces that have to do with your journey of lifespan within the organization. And so GLOW, journey the best, to me, each time we refine the program, I end up with the same comment: I'd love to be a student in this program, because we enrich it, embellish it, tweak it, make it relevant and of greatest value to students who are just uncertain about what is my work experience intended to do for me. Yes, I'm helping Doctors Hospital. Yes, I'm performing my professional skills and my competencies, etc. Yes, I'm helping the company make money. But what else is enriching for me that I can take way beyond Doctors Hospital, that I can probably add a big plus to Doctors Hospital's bottom line? And then my belief then is the experience in Journey the Best.
So, Dr. Diggiss, today you lead at the highest level at Doctor's Hospital. And, I just want to get a sense from you what your legacy, or what do you want for your legacy at this point?
I would like to be remembered as a healer and a helper, period. There's a lot of detail behind that. But if anybody was to ask, so I keep hearing about this Dr. Diggiss. Well, who was he? He was a healer and he was a helper.
Oh, mic drop. He was a helper. Okay. So, Dr. Diggiss, thank you so much for the conversation. I truly valued, and I think this was such a great discussion for not only our associates to hear, but just young people all around the world to hear how you started, what your journey was like, your regular, normal beginnings that led you to this impactful journey that you're on. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I truly enjoyed the insights, and I'm grateful to be working for you.
Yeah, the chief, working with you.
Thank you. So let's make a difference and have a lot of fun.